Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and remember, context is everything Media Network founder and CEO John Michael reading a textbook cover to cover. Today, I'm actually not reading the textbook at all because it is the review day for chapter 14, which is the Renaissance and the Reformation. So, what I'm going to do today is I'm going to read all my notes from the past 5 sections on the Renaissance and the Reformation. So, let's start. Let's start where we start. And that is Chapter 14, Section 1, the Renaissance starts in guess where? Italy. Italians get no respect. What the heck? I'm half Italian. And we do get respect. I'm kind of joking. Okay. The Renaissance starts in Italy. The Renaissance was a period of cultural rebirth and change that began in Italy in the 14th century. These are notes. Italy, with its rich history of ancient Roman culture, was the perfect environment for a cultural awakening. The Renaissance was marked by renewed interest in classical learning, a focus on individual achievement, and a spirit of adventure that led to the exploration of the new world. Humanism, an intellectual movement that focused on worldly subjects, and the study of classical culture was the heart of the Renaissance. Wealthy patrons played a major role in artistic flowering of the era. Patrons are folks that support financially artists. Some of the most notable patrons are the Medici family of Florence, among the richest merchants and bankers in Europe, exerted significant political and economic leadership and supported the arts generously. Florence came to symbolize the energy and brilliance of the Renaissance, producing a dazzling number of gifted poets, artists, architects, scholars, and scientists in a short span of time. Renaissance art reflected humanist concerns and portrayed religious figures against the classical backgrounds. The Renaissance transformed the way people viewed themselves and their world and laid the foundation for the modern era. So, Raphael, we're going to talk about him shortly, and I might have this down here already. Raphael to emblemize that Renaissance ethic of taking classical figures and putting them in Rome. You can see this is a very famous painting. I don't know what it's called, but you have all the guys: Plato, Socrates, Aristotle, a lot of other folks, Michelangelo, Da Vinci, and Raphael, all hanging out in like an ancient Roman library or something. They're all chilling, but it's a mix of times. So it's the Renaissance harkening back to the classical age. Because as I just said, that's the ethic of the Renaissance, to renew those classical learnings just with the modern flair of their era. Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, and Raphael are three of the most celebrated Florentine masters of the Renaissance. I got to go to Florence. Look at that. Something in the water. Probably lead. Leonardo da Vinci was a versatile artist with genius for invention. His interests extended to many fields, including botany, anatomy, optics, music, architecture, and engineering. He is known for his paintings such as the Mona Lisa and the Last Supper, and his sketches for a flying machine and an undersea boat. Michelangelo was a sculptor, engineer, painter, architect, and poet. He's known for his masterpieces like the Pietà, which I believe the Pietà is Mother Mary cradling the now deceased Jesus. Big sculpture. Pretty, you know, it's definitely famous for good reason. Let's go on the Pietà. Pretty epic. The Pietà, he did the sealing of the, where am I? He did the sealing of the, okay, Statue of David, the Sistine Chapel ceiling, and from which depicted biblical history from the world of creation to the flood of Moses. Sorry about the clunky reading, folks. That's part of the reason why I'm doing this, to get better at reading out loud, because I'm not very good at it, and I'll admit it. But I'm learning, and I'm definitely getting better, making marked steps. So I'm going to continue. Here we are. He's also designed the dome of St. Peter's Cathedral in Rome. This is Michelangelo. I didn't know that. Dome of St. Peter's is replicated all over. And actually, fun fact about the dome in St. Peter's, if you can picture the dome of the Capitol in the United States, same style. It's absolutely inspired by the dome of St. Peter's. There is an inner chamber all around the inside of that circle that is the dome. So there's actual hallways that you can climb the stairs up in a tunneling sort of fashion all the way to a certain outlook point wherein you're looking out at the beautiful ancient Rome as it stands today. Something that I should do at some point in this lifetime. We'll see. Okay. Raphael, younger than the other two, Da Vinci and Michelangelo, that is, blended Christian and classical styles in his paintings, as we said. He is known for a tender portrayal of the Madonna, the mother of Jesus. His famous painting of the School of Athens portrays imagery gathering of great thinkers and scientists, as we said before. Renaissance literature saw the rise of how-to books, such as the Book of the Courtier by Baldassare Castiglione, which describes the manners, skills, learnings, and virtues that a member of court should have. I think I'm going to read this book just for my own edification, because it sounds kind of interesting to know what the Renaissance folks thought was the right skills, manners, virtues of the court. Now, does that mean that they're the right things? I don't know. I'm interested to see how it feels when you read it. You'll kind of be able to tell. Castiglione's ideal courtier was well-educated, well-mannered aristocrat who mastered many fields. Niccolò Machiavelli, on the other hand, wrote The Prince, a guide to rulers on how to gain and maintain power. Unlike earlier political writers, Machiavelli did not discuss leadership in terms of high ideals. Instead, The Prince looked at the real rulers in the age of ruthless power, politics, and stressed the end justifies the means. That's chapter 14, section 1. This is chapter 14, section 2. Northern European Renaissance. So the Renaissance starts in Italy, right? Southern Europe. Northern European Renaissance, a bit of a different vibe. This is chapter 14, section 2. The Northern Renaissance began in the prosperous cities of Flanders in the 1400s and gradually spread to other parts of Northern Europe. Artists like Albrecht Dürer and Jan and Hubert van Eyck helped to spread Italian Renaissance ideas through their art, while Pieter Bruegel painted lively scenes of peasant life, and Peter Paul Rubens blended Flemish realism and classical themes. So these are all Northern Europeans doing their thing. Well, kind of reminiscing the Southern European ideals of the era. Northern humanists, such as Dutch priest Desiderius Erasmus, were inspired by Italian Renaissance ideas and helped to spread them through Northern Europe. Northern humanists being that movement that arose in the southern Italy during the beginning of the Renaissance, Northern humanists believed in education and the revival of ancient learnings to bring about religious and moral reform. Dutch priest Desiderius Erasmus called for a translation of the Bible into the vernacular, common tongue, and pressed for reform in the church, while English humanist Thomas More described the ideal society in utopia. Scholars like Erasmus and Moore wrote mostly in Latin, but the growing middle class demanded new works in the vernacular. François Rabelais wrote in French, using characters in Gargantua and Pantagruel to offer opinions on serious subjects, while William Shakespeare wrote 37 plays between 1590 and 1613 that are still performed today. Shakespeare's works encompassed a wide range of genres, from comedies that poked fun at young love to tragedies that depicted the downfall of individuals from their own weaknesses and external forces. His plays included Romeo and Juliet, Macbeth. Um, they showed the complexities of human emotion and experience. Shakespeare's literary legacy also includes the introduction of over 1,700 new words to the English language. Wow. The Renaissance in Spain produced Don Quixote by Miguel de Cervantes, a satirical novel that mocked chivalric romance. The advent of the printing press in Europe, pioneered by Johannes Gutenberg, complete edition of the Bible in 1456, revolutionized book production and distribution, making printed books more widely available and leading to an increase in literacy rates and also religious upheaval. And let's talk about the religious upheaval now. In chapter 14, section 3, which is called the Protestant Reformation. The printing press caused it, and that's good, you know? Okay. The Protestant Reformation. Abuses in the church, Catholic Church, during the late Middle Ages led to increasing worldliness and power struggles between popes and monarchs. We've detailed this thoroughly in, I believe, chapter 11. A lot of upheaval, a lot of excommunication and interdict, which are two interesting terms that you can check back in. I probably should link it here, right over here. I might do that. I might. Martin Luther, a German monk and theology professor, triggered a full-scale revolt in 1517 by drawing up the 95 Theses against indulgences. Indulgences, no good. Which he posted on the door of a church in Wittenberg. Now, an indulgence, let's just be quick about it. An indulgence is paying for salvation. You know, in Catholicism, you can go to confession. You can go, bless me, Father, for I've sinned, da-da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da. I've done this, I've done that, I've done the other. And then you're forgiven. You're free to enter into the gates of heaven. The idea is sometimes you do things that are bad, that you can't confess. But with indulgences, if you just give the church money, then they'll say, all right, you're forgiven. And that's probably not a good thing in terms of moral compass of a faith. Luther's teachings rejected church doctrine that good deeds were necessary for salvation, upheld the Bible as the sole source of truth, and rejected the idea of the church hierarchy with special powers. Those are Luther's beliefs. Instead, he talked of a priesthood of all believers with equal access to God through faith and the Bible. Luther called for the modification of the Catholic practices, including the simplification of the Mass, the banning of indulgences, confession of pilgrimages, and prayers to saints. That's similar to, I believe, Muslims. They do not like prayers to, no, they don't like pictures of saints. They don't like, what are they called? Golden calf. What are those called? Physical things. That's why you can't make a representation of Muhammad. Worshipping an item, physical item they take issue with. This is different. Never mind. Protestants, no praying to saints. Muslims, No praying to idols, like physical representations of something. I think both of those things are interesting thoughts. Martin Luther lived from 1483 to 1546, was a prominent figure in the spread of Lutheran ideas. His reforms found support among the clergy and German princes and saw Lutheranism as a way of combating the church corruption and seizing back church property. Luther's ideas also gained popularity among peasants who hoped to gain his support for social and economic change. However, Luther strongly favored social order and respect for political authority and denounced the violent peasant revolts. Despite efforts by the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V, to force Lutheran princes back into the Catholic Church, a settlement was reached with the Peace of Augsburg of 1555. Meanwhile, John Calvin emerged as an important reformer with his logical and profound ideas that greatly impacted the direction of the Reformation. John Calvin lived from 1509 to 1546. A French priest and lawyer, John Calvin shared Luther's beliefs in salvation through faith and the Bible as the only source of religious truth. He preached predestination and divided people into saints and sinners, with Calvinists aspiring to live like saints. John Calvin, founder of Calvinists, hence the name. Calvin set up a theocracy in Geneva where citizens were expected to live strictly moral lives. A theocracy, right? Democracy. People make decisions in a democracy. Theocracy, the is like religion. So God makes the order. Theocracies, godly ordered society. Let's hear what they have to say about the godly ordered society of Geneva by the Calvinist beliefs. Calvinism spread through Europe and set off wars of religion. In Scotland, John Knox led a rebellion that overthrew their Catholic queen and established the Scottish Presbyterian Church. Calvinists faced opposition from Catholics and Lutherans in Germany and France and organized the Dutch Reformed Church in the Netherlands. The Netherlands. What a weird name for a place. Netherlands. Such a strange name. And moving on to chapter 14, section 4. Only 2 more sections here, so probably about 8 more minutes. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for joining us. And I hope you have a wonderful day and a weekend if you're watching this on a Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. I hope you have a nice weekend if you're watching it on a Monday, but more of a future hope for your future endeavors. Chapter 14, section 4, effects of the Protestant Reformation. So what happened after this Reformation? During the Reformation, a new Protestant sect emerged with more radical ideas than Luther and Calvin. The Anabaptists rejected infant baptism, and some sought to abolish private property and use violence to hasten God's judgment. Although most called for religious toleration and separation of church and state, they faced harsh persecution. The Baptists, Quakers, Mennonites, and Amish are all descendants of the Anabaptists. In England, King Henry VIII broke with the Catholic Church for political reasons, not religious ones, and initially opposed the Protestant movement despite being named the Defender of the Faith by the Pope. In 1527, Henry VIII sought an annulment for his marriage to Catherine of Aragon, who had not produced a male heir. The Pope refused, leading Henry to break with the Roman establishment and establish his own Church of England under his rules through a series of laws. Many loyal Catholics were executed for treason, including Thomas More, who I think worked directly for Henry VIII. Thomas Cranmer, appointed as Archbishop by Henry, annulled the king's marriage and Henry wed Anne Boleyn, who I think he beheaded later. Despite the closing English of English convents and monasteries, Henry was not a religious radical and kept most Catholic forms of worship in the English Church, known as the Anglican Church. When Henry VIII died, his Protestant-leaning young son, teenager, Edward VI, became king and passed laws bringing Protestant reforms to England. He died young. I think he was still a teenager when he died. Mary Tudor, Henry's first daughter, reversed the changes and persecuted Protestants during her reign. She was more Catholic. Then she died. When Elizabeth I became queen, third offspring of Henry VIII, she established the Elizabethan Settlement, a compromise between Protestant and Catholic practices. The Church of England retained many Catholic traditions but accepted moderate Protestant doctrine. With the monarch as its head, Elizabeth's reign brought stability and unity to England and established a firmly Protestant nation, avoiding the religious wars that plagued other European states. The Catholic Reformation was a response to the Protestant Reformation. Led by Pope Paul III, the Council of Trent was called in 1545 to reaffirm Catholic views. The Inquisition. Wow, what a contradiction. It sounds like, oh, we're going in the right direction here. We're reforming, we're really looking deeply at ourselves. And then I say, the Inquisition, which is pretty bloody, was strengthened to root out heresy. What? The Inquisition was strengthened to root out heresy, and the Index of the Forbidden Books was established. Catholics couldn't read certain books because it was damaging to their soul, or something like that. Like Protestant books, indoctrinate them and all that. The Jesuits, led by Ignatius of Loyola, were recognized as a new religious order and embarked on a crusade to defend the spread of Catholic faith throughout the world. Catholic experienced renewals of feelings of faith, symbolized by Teresa of Avila. While the reforms did slow the Protestant tide, the return to some areas of the Catholic Church, Europe remained divided into Catholic South and a Protestant North. By the 1600s, however, Rome was far more devout than it had been 100 years earlier due to the Catholic Reformation, and piety and charity flourished across Catholic Europe. During a period of religious fervor, persecution was widespread, and both Catholics and Protestants fostered intolerance and targeted each other and radical sects like the Anabaptists. The same fervor also contributed to tens of thousands of deaths in witch hunts, with victims often being social outcasts blamed for society's problems. The Reformation also brought hard times to the European Jews, who with increasing restrictions and segregation, and called for the expulsion and destruction of their synagogues and books. From figures like Luther to Pope Paul IV, many Jews migrated to Poland, Lithuania, and parts of the Ottoman Empire, with some finding refuge in the Netherlands and under Dutch Calvinists. And finally, chapter 14, section 5, the scientific revolution. And then we'll be done, and then I'll bid you adieu, and I hope you have a wonderful day and enjoy your weekend. My name is John Michael. This is the Context is Everything Media Network review of chapter 14 of a textbook from 2001. Please share with somebody if you feel like they would enjoy. And please subscribe if you've made it this far. And leave a comment. You can just leave like a quarter. There's a quarter emoji. And if you put that in the comments, it's not like you're asking a question or anything. It's just you like flicking a quarter into the bucket, because it helps and it doesn't cost you anything. So could you just leave a quarter in the comments, please? That'd be great. I really would appreciate it. And thank you for watching. I do appreciate that as well. Your attention and all that, or just passive attention, as this is in the background, hence the name Ambient Classroom. Before the 16th century, European scholars believed that the Earth was the center of the universe, according to teachings of Ptolemy. However, the publication of Copernicus's book on the revolutions of the heavenly spheres proposed a heliocentric model, which was initially rejected by many experts. The Danish astronomer Tycho Brahe later provided evidence that supported Copernicus's theory, and Kepler's calculations showed that each planet moved in an oval-shaped orbit called an ellipse. Galileo observed through his telescope. Galileo's observations through his telescope confirmed Copernicus's theory and led to the controversy and condemnation by the church. Under the logic, if we were wrong about the Earth being the center of the universe, then that challenges every other truth that we have realized since. Interesting quote, right? I think that's pretty interesting. The scientific revolution in the early 1600s emphasizes observation and experimentation, rejecting traditional authorities and religious teachings. Francis Bacon and René Descartes challenged previous assumptions and traditions, with Bacon emphasizing experimentation and practical technologies, while Descartes focused on human reasoning. Isaac Newton tied it all together with his law of gravity and the uniform laws of nature. Other significant evidence were made by chemistry and medicine, with Robert Boyle distinguishing between individual elements and chemical compounds. Andreas Vesalius publishing the first accurate study of human anatomy, and William Harvey describing the circulation of blood. That's it. That's chapter 14. That's the Renaissance and the Protestant Reformation and the Scientific Revolution and the Catholic Reformation and King Henry VIII cutting off the heads of his wives and Descartes. I hope you have a wonderful day and enjoy the weather. Thank you for watching, and please share and enjoy if you enjoyed. Bye-bye. Goodbye. Yes.